Hello, today we'll be transforming this little area of beachfront into hopefully the perfect waterfront, and I'll be giving you all the tips along the way. So let's get right into it. Okay, so I've been improvising a shape of the marina here in survival with the stone, just by kind of flying into the sky and seeing how it looks. But I have been using Google Maps as some reference. As you can see, I've added in some angles to make the shape more interesting, as I always think it's important to stop your city just being confined to the Minecraft grid. I've also just done this to distinguish it from my creative city, which definitely relies on more curved designs. So now the next thing to do is to add the grass, for which the concrete powder can then go on top of, otherwise of course it'll just fall into the water, and we don't want that. Which I've done now. As you can see, I've simplified the shape a bit now, removed just one of the pontoon things, and I've placed in the smooth stone along the edge. But now let's turn our attention to the other side. So I'm thinking this other side will be more of a beach. So I'm currently marking out where another sea wall is going to be, to sort of match the other side on the left. I don't know if you can see now, but I've decided to split the beach in two. So you'll have the main long one over there going into the distance, and this small one by the marina just helps the transition between the beach and industrial sections. Now you might be wondering what this bit I'm building here is. Well, it's just marking out where a future pier might be. Don't worry, it's not going to be anything too tacky. But Fred and I were thinking that a Ferris wheel, a drop tower, and some cool attractions would be a great icon to anchor this area of the city, similar to how the bridge is the icon by the river. Okay, I've made a start on our first buildings, just some rustic sheds to fit the theme quite well, but meanwhile, right here I've marked out a bit more of the shape, like where the steps are going to go, and I've added a bit more grass on the beach, to place the sand on, of course, not just the grass. Unlike the section we started with, this side here is going to use polished andesite and stone for a darker tone compared to the smooth stone. And I'm just continuing it now here, so it's quite repetitive, but the gradient from polished andesite to stone is simple but does help with the repetitiveness. And so I'm going to use a similar gradient, but just on a grander scale for the raised section on the dockside. See, this is the proof of concept I've got. I think it looks pretty good, especially as the sun sets. The gradient just makes it look imposing. But you'll notice I've left a gap. Don't worry, that's intentional, as I've come up with an interesting warehouse design, which I'd like you to see. But I think you'll need to wait for that, as let's not get ahead of ourselves. So yeah, we need this sand and stuff to finish our beachfront first, and this smooth stone has smelted nicely for the pavements. Riveting footage. Right, that looks cool, and for now let's just forget that we need to extend this underwater, which means we can go straight on to building the warehouse. So here's the slightly more fiddly side to it, but as you can see from this shell so far, it's a pretty simple build. I don't really know what else you can do with a storage shed, to be honest, but don't worry because I've put a lot of effort into the roof, which I think is quite interesting. So now it's finished, you can see there's a lot of mixed textures in there. You can see I've got the smooth stone, but I've also tried to add the impressions of gutters or something to make it more interesting. And now that's finished, we can tidy up the rest of this area with all this concrete powder. And now I'm also just trying to mark out where some planters might go. I'm not sure that's permanent though, we'll probably address it later. And I'm also just finishing off these little dockside sheds. I've used tinted glass as opposed to black glass to sort of give that more modern look so that these sheds don't look completely decrepit. And there we go, they're filled in nicely. To be honest, it definitely needs a bit more work, so I think I'll come back to this area at the end of the video, because in the meantime, I've been working a bit over the other side. So we've got to start on the base of the next building, which is an interesting sort of blend between old and new with a dockside apartment block. However, there's one problem. The resources it uses are stripped jungle log. a resource that takes annoyingly long to get. So let's go to the jungle and get some jungle log. You know, because we have a farm for oak log, I think I'll mix that in towards the top to subsidize the jungle log, which I don't have as much of. And hey, I think it'll create a nice gradient, especially if I mix in some oak planks as well. Okay, cool. So now that building's done, I hope you've enjoyed the time lapse. Now I've also been starting work on extending the beach down underwater a bit, using dirt, which I'll then add sand on top of course. Like this. I mean, I think it's a step in the right direction, but it makes me think we're going to need to continue it properly, which is a lot more work that I'll do off camera. I've designed this neighbouring building using birch log so that I can use the wood farm. See if I just turn it on here. Now you can see the TNT and bone meal is going. And now we can start placing in the saplings and it automatically moves them across and harvests them with the TNT. And there we go. That's quite a bit. I mean, I'll just take what's in the chest, which will be plenty. So let's get right into building. To add a bit of variety, I added a slanted section to the roof of this one so that it's not all just flat roofs on this side. So now this is done, let's turn our attention to the next set of apartments, above here. So yes, first I needed to finish the roofs of the sheds, and I've done that, using some varieties of deep slate, which I think gives them different personalities. You can see we've got like the deep slate tiles, on top of one that's maybe been repaired more recently. So next I think we're going to have some steps down, and mark out a pavement in front of our next build, to make it easier to build that. On this sort of pavement, transitioning to a pedestrian area, the sort of details I like to add are some bollards which are necessary for safety so that a car doesn't just come and try to drive into the pedestrian zone. I mean, especially as it's downhill. So, right then, I guess with the necessary safety precautions out of the way, we can get started on building our sandstone apartments. This next build is going to require a lot of smooth sandstone. So it's lucky we've got this sort of super smelter to smelt all of this sandstone. Okay, it's not that quick, so we might need to wait a little while. I think that's enough, so we can go now. This is the first facade done. I hope you can see what I'm going for. So now I'm happy with that. Our next thing is going to be to complete the back, for which I'll need a few more resources. You'll also notice over here I've been working on further continuing the beach underwater so that it doesn't look like it's floating. We're getting there, but I still think a few more layers of tough and deep slate to transition to a darker tone to sort of blend it into the water will definitely help it be more convincing. But I think I'll do that after completing the apartments and after making some rockets because I've run out. Yeah, despite having a lot of farms, we still don't have a proper sugarcane farm. As far as I'm aware, Fred's probably made one without me realising. I'm also going to make a food box to store lots of golden carrots so that I don't have to run out of food. Okay, back to the progress. So with this small patch of pavement, I can start building on top of that with the design I've come up with for this last side and the back. So let's get right into it. Starting with the base I've got now, but somehow I've run out of resources again. So I think we'll need to do a quick resource gathering session, but I'm hoping I can find some sandstone by clearing up this old project shulker pile. There, the benefits of tidying up after yourself. But I know I'll need more than this, which is why I'm on a quick sandstone gathering mission. So now let's finish this last side. And with this sandstone, I can actually finish the balcony section of the dockside building. So yeah, here it is. I've added in some basic details like a water drain on the side, but you've probably noticed an obvious lack of windows. Luckily we've got a lot of glass from repairing tools, so this was relatively painless. Added a nice detail of iron trapdoors for shutters, which is nice. And I think that looks a lot better. So now, before the end of the video, let's finally add in the greenery to this side of the dock to really bring it all together. But there's no mangrove leaves, my favourite type. Well, you know what's coming next. So now I'm just adding in the leaves, and what I'm going to do is actually pile the leaves higher towards this side on the left, because they're sort of growing or resting against, I'm thinking, a future boat wrack or something. But anyway, it just makes more sense in my head. Mixing in some azalea leaves as well, because they keep their colour in the ocean biome. Then filling in the empty space with the grass. Now let's add in some palm trees into these planters. So first I like to just plan out the height. It might look quite tall, but actually palm trees tend to look good when they're like really tall and towering over everything else, so that the sight lines don't like combat each other. Oh, also I've added some concrete to the base of this warehouse because it really was just way too brown. So now I'm stacking up the fences to about the height I want, ready to build to the top. Which I've so nearly done. Just a few more leaves for this last tree. Right, it's time to finish off this area. So first I'm thinking we'll do the roof of this building, then we'll work a bit more on completing the pavement over here. You can see I've done a bit of planning of the backside, just marking out the size. Then finally I've got a plan for a really cute little lighthouse over there that's going to really bring this whole area together, so let's get right into it. Over here I wanted to know your thoughts, because I'm thinking of placing stone brick slabs below these andesite slabs, as it gives it a nice darker texture. To be honest, I think I'll just have a line of stone bricks below. So now some quick work on the pavement, planning some future palm trees, but I stopped because I wasn't sure on my plans for this area, though I do have big plans to build a pier or something in a future episode. A small detail, but I think adding some mooring posts with these walls adds a lot of realism, and it adds a splash of colour. So yeah, to do this, just mix up mud brick walls and granite walls, and they kind of look like wooden posts. I think I'll space them out a bit more though. Finally, the lighthouse, which will go behind me here. Let's gather the resources. So we're going to need tinted glass, black stone, let's make it polished, white stained glass panes, calcite, diorite walls, dark oak, slabs, trapdoors and fences, a sea lantern, and a redstone torch. And there we go. I hope you've enjoyed today's video. If you did at all, you could subscribe, which would be absolutely amazing, as we've got some radical stuff coming up, which Fred and I are excited to show you on this world. Anyway, I'm very happy with this area so far. I think it's a massive improvement and the lighthouse looks so good at night. I think the addition of some older builds as well gives this area much more personality, so maybe that's something to add elsewhere in the city. If you've made it all the way to the end of this video, feel free to comment, and thanks for watching.